Once upon a time, in a room full of wonders, where every step leads to magic, and the journey of a true story begins here, with amazing guests and true miracles. Please like and subscribe for more amazing videos.
It's an honor to be here on your program, and thank you for the good work that you do. What my NDE was September of 1993, due to contraction of a upper respiratory condition known as whooping cough, or clinically known as pertussis. I went to a playground completely suffocated due to this condition. I was just the age of 3 years old. All parts of my body weren't functioning, and I literally felt, no brain activity, because my brain, I just felt it just snap in half due to the deprivation of oxygen. And that's when really the spirits, came in, and I had a full crossing over experience that was very much a euphoric and mystical near-death experience, in which, kind of like you see behind me, I encountered my guardian angels. I saw infinite amount of angels all around me. I was aware of who I was, why I was here, previous lifetimes, and the soul's work that I would commit to within this journey, as well as awareness of God, soul family, Christ consciousness, and more. So it was a beyond powerful, euphoric, mystical encounter that I had, which was very different, from moments before, when I just completely was deprived of oxygen, totally suffocated, had nothing to hold on to, and I experienced the lowest level of abyss and the highest form of suffering. And moments later, I was, put into the most amount of euphoria and elation that you could possibly have. So it was quite a profound transition of, spectrums of sensations that I had. But I look back at it now with more positive feelings and gratitude than not. From past lives, I was able to remember people that were on the other side. I also saw people that I knew that I incarnated with throughout countless lifetimes. We would call that a soul pod, or a soul group, or soul family. So those were certainly there. It was very familiar. I think sometimes we walk around thinking we're all this, and I just really was able to come back from my NDE knowing that there's so much more than just this body, and life, it has a very much of a spiritual orchestration to it. This isn't the only thing that there is. There's a higher intelligence, a purpose, and we belong to a much greater reality than sometimes we let ourselves to believe to. Near-death experiences, I think the beauty of them, it's like, for instance, I do past life regressions, so a client will talk about a past life they had, somewhere in the 1400s in Europe, and who knows, or ancient Egypt, whatever. And it's cool, but I think the main thing is, all right, how does that experience change you? What did you learn from that? How could you grow from that? And I think the whole point of near-death experience isn't so much the story that you have, but rather what you are able to do with it, how it changes you, then in turn how you're able to share it with others so it could change them as well. So near-death experience, I do believe the point of it is for transformation for the person and those who are able to view them. And that's why the work that you're doing is so great, because it is transformative. They have done a lot of studies on people who have just heard near-death experiences, not experienced it, just heard or witnessed. And they find time and time again, the vast majority of people who hear these encounters are transformed and changed for the better. So information, as we know, is so pivotal to who we are, what we believe, and how we live our lives. And so I think that's why the channel that you're doing is so beautiful. But to answer your question in a direct way, absolutely I was transformed. Near-death experience research will tell you that there's a difference between the brain and the mind, which goes against material reductionism. We'll just say when the brain goes, then the mind goes. So for myself, my brain had no functioning, and yet I was able to encounter the subconscious and higher mind and the higher self. So the superconscious, if you will. And so after this, when I came back, I felt that my brain was much different, and the filter was very much open. And so I had this sliver of light that would go through my brain that I felt quite clearly. and I was able to connect to the spirit realm very much at ease. And so I think really the brain is just a filter of the spirit realm. And so when we are more relaxed and more open, that's when the spirit realm is able to open up. I think people ask me what's the difference of a medium and a regular person. I think we all have mediumistic, qualities or capacity to have interdimensional communication. The difference with a medium or intuitive is that their brains are able to go from GABA or beta waves, the first or second layers of the brain waves, and switch very rapidly, into more of the alpha and theta waves. Where for the vast majority of us, we have to meditate for a longer period to get to that point. And once we're at that point, many times we'll feel downloads or awareness of things. So I think really, a lot of this stuff is very much a brain thing. And that's certainly what happened to me. And that's why meditation is so beautiful, because it does help to really regulate, open, and clear out the filter of the brain so that the mind and the brain can be working with each other and not against each other. Well, yeah, in dream states, a lot of times people will be able to encounter the astral plane, the astral field. They'll be able to ascend to higher vibrations. It's not because it's at 3 in the morning that because you have your salt lamps on or it's a relaxed environment that you have these profound dreams. A lot of it, like I said, is just a brain thing. And so when you're sleeping, you're more so in those delta brain waves. And when you're in the delta brain waves, think of Delta airline. Some of you could sleep on planes, but I can't for the life of me, no matter how many medications I take. But when you're sleeping, your brains are in the lowest vibrational frequency. Thus, your spirit vibration is able to increase. So that's why a lot of people have dreams where they feel that they travel to other forms of existences or other planes. So absolutely it is possible. But to have an OBE, you don't need to die. You don't need to have an NDE, and you don't need to have an NDE to understand these things either. A lot of people want to come to my workshops and seminars and self-induce themselves to have near-death experience, and often have a lot of pushback as well as caution to do that, as well as how unnecessary it is. I think people don't understand, for not all, but at least speaking for myself, how difficult a near-death experience is. It's not what the public perceives it. It does come with a price, and it was not easy having what I had. I had a lot of trauma, a lot of difficulty. It took me a long time to process this stuff. It made life complicated at first, but now I view it as my greatest blessing. But it did take work and understanding for me to get to that point. But the key is you don't have to go through all that I went through to have that. Listening to some good information, reading books, meditating, having gratitude, opening up your mind and your heart, connecting the two, will allow you to have these experiences. I mean, later in my life, I had, probably in my early 20s, I had an out-of-body experience where one day I just woke up and I was out of my body for a period of time. It lasted a couple of weeks actually. So I think sometimes OBEs happen to us. It's kind of like a lobster shell, kind of like the shirt that I'm wearing. It's like you have this certain shell of form, and then you get to a next level and you kind of upgrade, and the universe kind of shows you things that you're meant to understand, so that you could excel your path. But there's a lot of different programs that help people to have self-induced out-of-body experiences through a lot of transpersonal work, which is not a guarantee, but I've seen quite a bit of success with people within time with practicing some of the modalities and tools to get beyond their body. I think people just have to ask themselves, you get out of your body, all right, so what is that? How does that change you? What do you do with it? How does that affect your daily life? That's the key. People are looking for evidence to inform their belief systems. That's why a lot of people go to, let's say, registered or evidential mediums, because you're a complete stranger and they're able to pick up things that no one else knows that will give you points of evidence that there is life after death and that our loved ones are doing okay and they're connected to lives that we live. And thus, hearing that information can help someone in their grief journey. It doesn't immunize them, but there's a big association of having a belief in these things and how we're able to grieve. Now, near-death experiences are another layer of evidence, of life after death. And so, I think what it does is it allows more of a wider umbrella of possibilities for people to have, their own courtroom of the afterlife and what they feel is evidential and real, what may not be, and that could help them to inform their own belief systems. But it requires an openness. But at a certain point, you look at all the evidence, it's very hard to deny that. And so, why I do what I do is I think it helps to really shift a lot of people's memories that they have, that they know within themselves, to remember who they are, and also that could help them to really navigate this earth plane by tapping into, a greater reality. And so we're on this earth, but not of this earth, in a way. And so when we're able to tap into higher understandings and spiritual truths, that could help us to navigate the challenges of our lives in a deeper, more effective way. So that's kind of what I do, where I work with a lot of people who might have lost a loved one or are struggling day in and day out. And so I believe the quality of our life becomes the quality of our focus, which is based on the quality of our information. And so I try to give out the most reflective information of reality as possible, so that people are able to really, surf and navigate the ways of their lives as spiritual beings having these human experiences. I do, like you mentioned, do regression therapy with clients, which to me is fascinating. I think at the very least a client, comes to my office and they're able to maybe just kind of like experience themselves in a lighter state. They're able to distress. But even deeper than that, a lot of clients who are able to go to past lives have a clear knowing that they go on, that they don't die, that they're not, put in fire and brimstone in hell. Like they are having forgiveness and understanding. And for many, it's very relieving because we get programmed by a lot of our religious beliefs or family systems that, if we do bad, we'll get bad. And the other side is not a place of judgment. We're the ones who really judge ourselves. And so past lives really allow people to understand that there is a loving God, there is a forgiving God, there is an empathetic God, far more than our greater understanding. And with that belief, there's a big transformation in our behaviors. I think there's they both go hand in hand. How we see ourselves is how we understand God. How we understand God is how we see ourselves. And so when you're able to have a more evolved version of God, you're able to then also have some room for yourself to grow and evolve from that belief system. I was just presenting in Virginia Beach at the Edgar Cayce Center. I don't know if you're familiar with Edgar Cayce, but he's one of the most well-known historical figures of intuitive work, and he himself was able to get into self-induced trance and tap into body scans that helped heal his conditions, and people who went to all these doctors. He had no medical background, and they were able to be healed by him, as well as able to really access, the Akashic field and, really pertinent predictions as well as awareness of civilization as we know it. But Cayce would say that, anyone can do this work, but it does come with a price, or it can come with a price. You have to be willing to take it, because a lot of times you have to face, some things that are not easy. A lot of times it can take a toll, on you, but that's why self-work is very important. Working with the right people is important, and having a connection to your guides or higher self is very important as you navigate these things. But sometimes it could be too much. But yeah, you're right. With regression therapy, there is a phenomenon called cellular memory, where the cells in our body hold on to memories from past lives. And so that's why maybe you might have had this reaction, because you kind of tapped into a part of that life, and the cells in your body still hold those memories, and they're able to have these incredible physiological reactions within the body. So it is a lot more common than you would imagine, but it does certainly happen. But yeah, I always say the way out is something is through it. And so yes, there's a short-term little bit of discomfort. Long-term, we're able to really have more clarity, more answers from going to that much in this life. So we're here to face those things and not to run away from those things. I just think it's important to be curious, to be open, to explore oneself. That's how we're really able to find a lot more truths. I always give the analogy of the globe, where there was once a part of time in the globe where people just saw the globe as flat, and then some daring people challenged those bounds, and they found that that was not the case. It was round, and they were able to really find all new parts of the world, and it changed the entire world. So, that analogy is kind of like the way people are. Some people will walk in just very boxed in with how they see things, and that's the reality, and they're not willing or able to challenge that. I think a part of the spiritual growth is we're always open and willing to challenge our paradigms of reality and continually expand and evolve what we know each and every day. And that allows us to ascend, because I think, in a way, the more that we ascend, the more that we could understand God and embody the God intelligence. And that's what this lifetime is just to be closer and more connected to our inner divinity. So I think right now it's a pivotal time to really connect, expand, explore, and also understand the reason for these things. That you have these experiences is not just for yourself to hold on to. We are together, we are one, and part of it is understanding the value of letting that go, moving it through you, but to the right people and people who will use that in a proper way. But this work can come with a cost. But you have to focus on the people who are understanding the messages, who are changed by the message, and just keep that, in your focus in this work that you do. So right here, this is my first book. This is Life After Breath. And this is my second book, The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. And they're both available on paperback, audio, and Kindle on Amazon.com. You just search Jacob Cooper LCSW on Amazon.com, or my two books, and you will be able to purchase them in many different forms. And they were fun to write. I did both of them probably by my 32nd or 33rd birthday, which is a big honor. And hopefully I'll be able to write some more books coming up. I do get great joy from writing, and you're able to reach viewers in a much more intimate, different way, and they're able to take a piece of your experience with them. So it's a lot more. You have a lot more accessibility in reach through the potential of books. Everyone obviously follow this channel, and if you want to connect deeper with me, to book a regression session, therapy session, any type of session, or just get into contact. My website is jacoblcooper.com. You can also see my social media links and YouTube channel as well, so we can stay connected too.